Now, more than ever, we heard a lot about NATO. Let's all see together what it is and its role in today's conflict.
Hi, and welcome back to CA Blog, the suitable channel for young people curious about current affairs. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was founded as a consequence of the conflict with Soviet Union. It is a political and military defense alliance between Europe and North America, and its purpose is to promote peace, stability, and security among the member states.
NATO works to establish connection and cooperation between its member and non-NATO countries. Through this partnership, NATO prevents conflict not only within its member but also with countries outside the alliance. The decision taken by the NATO, especially by the North Atlantic Council, which is the political decision-making body of the organization, are the representation of the collective will of the members.
It works with 30 partner countries and other international organizations such as United Nations or European Union. Nowadays, there are 30 members of the NATO from Europe and North America that cooperate to ensure the safety of each other.
The alliance was signed in Washington in 1949 as to represent a collective defense. As a matter of fact, an attack against one of the members is considered an attack against all of them. This principle is written in Article 5 of the alliance. NATO was founded because of the Soviet Union threat. The aim was to deterring Soviet expansionism, and several Western European democracies collaborated to work on projects for greater military cooperation and collective defense.
The Cold War defined the alliance, but even if Soviet Union collapsed, a defense alliance such as NATO is well needed to prevent other conflicts. The original purpose of NATO was a collective defense of its member, but now NATO seeks to promote security through partnership and cooperation. As a matter of fact, since 1990, the NATO has developed relations with non-member countries, including their adversaries of the Cold War, and some of them has become member of the NATO, such as Poland.
One of its interventions was afterward the 9/11 terrorist attacks in USA, and NATO sent forces in Afghanistan to bring stability.
The Council agreed that if it is determined that this attack was directed from abroad against the United States, it shall be regarded as an action covered by Article 5 of the Washington Treaty.
NATO started with 10 member countries from Europe and 2 more members from North America.
Over the years, the number of members has increased, and today NATO is an alliance that unites 30 states between Europe, North America, and the Balkans. And the organization is always open to new entries, as it is written on its website.
NATO membership is open to any other European state in a position to further the principle of this treaty and to contribute to the security of the North Atlantic area.
Another European country has recently showed interest in the NATO, and it is Ukraine. The entry of Ukraine in the alliance of NATO could lead to difficulties for Russia. Russia has always considered NATO as a threat since the Americans, great enemies of the Russian, have the possibility to distribute armed forces also in the European members of the alliance, and in this way Russia feels dangerous at home because of the old opponents of the Cold War.
Therefore, Russia asked for a guarantee that NATO won't expand its influence even closer, especially in Ukraine. The Russian request was considered unacceptable, as the NATO has always had an open-door policy, as we said before. NATO's decision not to reject Ukraine's request led Russian President Putin to move troops to the Ukrainian border.
Putin's threat was noticed by NATO, which sent military forces to member countries alongside Ukraine, such as Poland, as it cannot directly send troops in Ukraine because it is not a member of the alliance.
But why did Ukraine decide to join NATO? In 2014, Russia annexed the Crimea, a region of Ukraine. With this fact, Ukraine considered to be part of NATO, and therefore to accept the proposal that was made years before.
Russia continually opposed this decision by threatening the invasion. Ukrainian President Zelensky has made it clear that Ukraine cannot be a member of NATO, thus revoking the entry request. But despite this, Russia invaded Ukraine with troops and heavy weapons, settling in cities and destroying Ukrainian military bases.
Today, however, not only are military bases being attacked, but real cities and people have been forced to leave their countries to escape from Russian attacks.
Watching the videos, it seems surreal that today it is possible that all of this is really happening. It's also difficult to think that everything comes from a president who has put its interests and fears first instead of thinking about lives of another neighboring country. Most people probably didn't even expect a reaction like this, and it seems unthinkable after almost 70 years without worries of a war in Europe.
Today's young people were born and raised only with memories of the war, studied at school or taught by grandparents, but they had never lived it, and everyone hoped they would never have to live it. For those who do not live in Ukraine, definitely is not as afflicted as the Ukrainians, but this conflict is also causing many consequences outside Ukraine and Russia, and no one can guarantee that things will not get worse.
Before, it was ridiculous to think of a war, and now this is happening, so we cannot think that it is impossible that it will get worse. The only thing we can do is hope. And you? What do you think?